Hello, in this video I'm going to be covering what is nitric oxide. To start off, I will make the first part of the video for you. So I'm just going to put very simply what is nitric oxide so you can learn it quickly and easily. And then the second part, I'm going to cover how learning this relates to me in the health issues that I deal with. So, start off, pretty simply, nitric oxide is just a colorless gas with the formula NO. So that's pretty simple, not incredibly easy to remember because nothing there sticks out. But what it does defines what it is. So I'll get to that in just a bit. So continuing on, nitric oxide is also a free radical, meaning it has at least one unpaired valence electron, making it highly chemically reactive. And there's a lot more to that, but I'll leave it at this. Nitric oxide is a free radical. So nitric oxide synthesis is the production of nitric oxide from L-arginine by a family of enzymes called nitric oxide synthases, or however you pronounce that. So that's the synthesis. But what does nitric oxide do? Well, it's an important cellular signaling molecule. That's kind of vague. So continuing on, it helps modulate vascular tone, insulin secretion, airway tone, don't know what that word is, peristalsis, and is involved in angiogenesis and neural development. So angiogenesis is when new, I believe, blood cells or veins are created. I think it's veins, when new veins are created. I could be wrong about that. But basically, it does a ton of complex stuff through cellular signaling. Since that's kind of a bit vague, I mean, it's not vague, but it's like, okay, it signals, but it's like kind of hard for that to stick in my mind, at least. So I found this post by a doctor on Facebook, and it tells the benefits of nitric oxide. So it says, as a vasodilator, it decreases blood pressure and improves blood flow to the organs. It's an anti-inflammatory action in the arteries, prevents blood clotting and obstructions in the arteries, immune defense, destruction of viruses and parasitic organisms, plays a role in respiration, yes, that one, enhances memory and learning, protects the skin, promotes a healthy digestive tract, hormones, regulates bladder function, basically a ton of stuff. So I guess maybe the best way to remember it literally is, it is a almost body-wide signaler for all kinds of different functions in the body. Okay, and now for the part that relates to me. Originally, the reason I looked into nitric oxide is because I was looking into the endothelium and endothelial cells because of a health issue I have, and maybe being related to a dysfunction in endothelial cells, maybe. But basically, one of the main mechanisms of endothelial cell dysfunction is the diminishing of nitric oxide. So I was like, okay, well, I should learn about nitric oxide then. And so I looked into it, and as I just said, diminishing of nitric oxide is one of the main mechanisms of endothelial dysfunction, and it's often due to high levels of asymmetric dimethylarginine, which interfere with the normal L-arginine stimulated nitric oxide synthesis and leads to hypertension and bad stuff. The most prevailing mechanism of endothelial dysfunction is an increase in reactive oxygen species, which can impair nitric oxide production and activity via several mechanisms. So the key thing that kept popping out to me was nitric oxide. So the endothelium of blood vessels uses nitric oxide to signal the surrounding smooth muscle to relax, resulting in vasodilation and increasing blood flow. I thought that was interesting because in the past, a lot of the health issues that I've had were kind of like muscular issues. Like I would go to the doctor with like spasms and stuff, and they're like, oh, this looks like, well, they had no idea what it was, but they're like, this is maybe something muscular related. So yeah, maybe I need more nitric oxide because my nitric oxide isn't signaling the surrounding smooth muscle to relax, or I don't know, kind of hypothesizing here. So this one actually stuck out to me as well. Another series of issues I've had is with my nasal area and breathing and sinuses. I often have a lot of popping and cracking sounds in my sinuses. And I learned that nasal sinuses store nitric oxide. And of course, long-term depletion can lead to all these issues like plaque buildup. And pretty much what I was reading, it was saying that nasal breathing produces nitric oxide within the body, while oral breathing does not. So it's basically telling people to breathe through your nose. But the way that I interpreted that from my situation is that maybe, I guess there's a probability that a sinus issue can block nitric oxide from being taken into your body, and then that can cause all kinds of issues. So it's like, what if that's what's going on? That'd be interesting. Another little interesting thing I read is that vitamin D carries out all its endothelial functions with nitric oxide as the mediator. And I'm actually low in vitamin D last time I checked. So I guess that would suck to be having crappy endothelial functions and or crappy nitric oxide and crappy vitamin D, because they're both used together. And then one more thing that I actually got from that Facebook post is that the largest source of nitrites, or nitrates, and therefore nitric oxide in the human diet is vegetables. And apparently beetroot is the best of the bunch, with most research focusing on beetroot juice. So it's a lot of information. They're learning all that. I'm like, what can I do to test this? So I was like, well, I've read up and it may not be safe, but I'm gonna keep researching it. But it says you can actually take L-arginine to produce more nitric oxide. And obviously if you start feeling better, that means that more nitric oxide is helping you. So that means you were probably deficient in nitric oxide, or something in that process. So I'm thinking about that. Another thing is to, as I was just saying, beetroots, eat beets or drink beet juice, because apparently that can, produce more nitric oxide. And then I guess this one's more related to endothelial function, but it's also related to nitric oxide in a way. That's the mediator, but just exposing your skin to more sun, because that will then you intake more vitamin D, and then yes, better endothelial functions. I feel like there is a ton of information here, and it's all kind of like related in different ways. So it gets confusing because it's related but different. If this helped you learn something new, then feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.